It's October 9th, guys, and what should I say? Oktoberfest is gone. So right now, the fans of the Oktoberfest have to wait for 344 days more for the next Anstich, the start of the Oktoberfest 2025. And I took this special event to make episode 199, so right before the anniversary, about non-alcoholic beers, because when many people they have drank too much in the last weeks, especially because of Oktoberfest, and in addition I have never been a beer guy. So the second reason for this episode is I came to alcohol-free beer. I like the taste of beer now through the alcohol-free versions of it, and I tasted so many that many people kept asking, when do you do an episode? When are you recording an episode on alcohol-free beers? And here we are with the episode on my favorite alcohol-free beers. There will also be an Instagram post with, just to highlight my really special ones I tasted. Have fun with this absolutely amazing and very refreshing episode on alcohol-free beer. Welcome to the Pinot and Pixel podcast episode number 199, and this episode is for alcohol-free beers, dedicated to a world I have barely tasted over the last 25 years. But right now, through my, I would say, growing interest in the alcohol-free category, especially when it comes to business models, ideas, and taste as well, I discovered that beer is actually quite an interesting product. And when it comes to alcohol-free versions, there is some really good ones in the market. And you don't have to be afraid that this podcast will be renamed to Porter and Pixel, but this is one of my favorite episodes, and I fell in love with alcohol-free beer, especially in California in August, and it caught me so much that I brought the 4 cans of my favorite beers from the US to Germany, empty ones. Just because I like them so much, I wanted to take a picture and I wanted to talk about it in one episode. And here we are with my episode on alcohol-free beers. And as you might know, I am not a beer guy, so it's quite tough for me to talk about beer so much in detail. Many of you kept asking, what do you think of alcohol-free beer? Is there any good version of it? And good meaning, is it tasty or not? And it's the same with wine. You have to try a lot of stuff until you find your favorite beer, your favorite wine, and your favorite style, I would say, at least. And it's the same with alcohol-free versions. And if you don't have the expectation that this is super close to the original version, you will definitely find a really good one. And in some cases, in some beers, we will talk about in a second, it will definitely be tough to differentiate between the one with alcohol or without having the direct comparison against each other. So if you just have a beer, you will not be able, in my opinion, especially when it comes to 3 beers I have in my mind, to differentiate between the one with alcohol and without. Because, of course, the companies are interested in making the alcohol-free version as close to the original one to keep the taste you would expect from your favorite brand. And this is what actually beers like Heineken, Corona, and Guinness especially really managed in a very, very excellent and quite impressive way. But let's start with some history. You know, I'm a history guy, and I want to talk a bit about the history of alcohol-free beers, and I also want to talk about the market. And I already have talked about the first commercial alcohol-free beer in an episode on alcohol-free drinks, but the history of alcohol-free beer started way earlier in the Prohibition between 1920 and 1933 in the US, because people were not allowed to sell alcohol. And there were some quite intelligent, not only brewers, also business people, and the company behind that was Abinbev, and they partnered up with a company called Pabst, and what they did is they brewed a beer, they heated it up, they made a distillation on that beer, and slowed it down, let's put it like this, to 0.5 and sold it. And this category was called near beer, so being close to beer. And fun fact, in addition, some smart brewers, they sold the beers with kind of a hidden gift box where the original spirit was kept and gifted to the person who bought the beer. So actually, you were able to mix your own normal strength beer afterwards at home. Quite smart, wasn't it? I mean, Prohibition made many people smart, and it had a big influence in a good and in a bad way on agriculture, on the wine industry as well. And the 13 years were quite a huge cut in those in all those industries. And fortunately, the categories of beer and wine survived and were really regrowing after 1933. And one of the first beers that came up with an alcohol-free version after the prohibition was Coors, the non-alcoholic, but still just the distilled version and not super close to original beer. And of course, the technology and the knowledge was not widely available and not super, or at least developed in a way that it is today. Today, it's way easier to make beers like that of high quality. And it took some more years. The world had to wait for the first commercial alcohol-free beer, and it was brewed in Eastern Germany. In 1972, a brewer said, "We have to brew a beer for the fair in Leipzig, and it has to be alcohol-free." So what he did, he started the fermentation process, stopped it at 0.5 and sold it. And I mean, my parents grew up in Eastern Germany and they kept saying that this was really bad. The taste was really bad. You couldn't drink that. But there was a huge run on it. That was a big success for the first alcohol-free beer, of course. Everybody was interested in it, even though it was crappy stuff. And it took some more years until the 1980s, where especially in Central Europe, brands like Klausthaler, for example, and Krombacher started building the category. And the same thing happened in the UK, in the US. And today, the alcohol-free market in beer is one of the biggest and also still growing, massively growing in the world. And when we have a look on the main drivers, the main markets, there is some markets you would expect, like the US, because there's, 300 something people living over there that drink a lot. And this is definitely one of the biggest markets. It's actually the biggest market for alcohol-free beer. The second one, you wouldn't guess what the country might be. Any idea? It's China. It's almost similar size to the US when it comes to value. The difference just, especially in the population. China has, 3.5 times or so the population of the US. When it comes to value, it's almost the same amount. We talk about $7 billion each country, the US and China. Isn't that crazy? And I would say it's quite tough to find sales figures for big brands, but I would say the brand that is the most successful when it comes to alcohol-free beer is Heineken. Heineken is available in 50 freaking 5 countries on the planet, and it's probably the most well-known brand when it comes to alcohol-free beer. Many of them are catching up. Many of the big beer brands like Corona, like Guinness, they have their alcohol-free version. They are gaining popularity. Carlsberg, and also in Germany, there are some really big players, mostly focused on the domestic market. And there is a brand, which is also on my list tonight, that has been growing rapidly over the last 8 years. So big that they even made it to Forbes magazine, and they have a valuation speculated around $800 million. A company that was founded in 2016 with the name Athletic Brewing. Available in the US in cans, and what shall I say? It's freaking delicious. But sorry, too many diversions. We'll be there in a second. Talking about market and brand size. The largest market for alcohol-free beer when it comes to the share compared to the normal beer market is actually Germany, the most mature market, and every 10th beer brewed in Germany is alcohol-free. Every 10th beer. And we talk about a market size of $0.9 billion, $900 million. That's a lot. And due to the fact that it's quite mature, every 10th beer already is alcohol-free, the growth is expected to be 1.3% in the next year. And there's still a growth, and it will keep growing steadily, but it's no comparison to other markets. Talking about the biggest market, the US, rapid growth over the last 5 years, driven by brands like Athletic Brewing and the big brands that are present over there, Corona and also Heineken, Carlsberg, all the other guys. And market share, 31% of worldwide alcohol-free beer is from the US, is consumed in the US. The focus is on craft beer, actually, especially when it comes to the modern brands, like Athletic is one of those brands. 7 billion is the market, as I said, 0.9% share of alcohol-free. So every 100th beer is alcohol-free in the US. And this is why there is a massive growth expected for the next years, because there's a huge potential. And compared to the UK, for example, UK actually is a trendsetter in alcohol-free, and not only in beer in general, especially in spirits. I love the spirits market, but this is another episode. Sharply rising market share, 2% at the moment is alcohol-free when it comes to the share of total beer. So every 15th beer in the UK is alcohol-free, 1.6% annual growth expected, and the current size is 400 million, $0.4 billion. And last but not least, in the, I would say, beer drinking countries is Australia. Increasing popularity over there. Beer is actually declining in Australia, while alcohol-free beer is expected to grow 1.2%, and every 30th beer is alcohol-free in Australia, meaning 3.4% are the share of the alcohol-free market. And what is quite interesting is when you have a look at the markets that are really seen to be beer countries, so China, Australia, UK, Germany, and the US, the most mature market is Germany, and also with the smallest expected growth rate. And then you have a market with the biggest value, the biggest share when it comes to the share of worldwide beer consumption, alcohol-free beer consumption, and expected to grow massively. So it's a no-brainer when you are a brand, an alcohol-free brand, and you want to either invest, you want to grow, or you just want to start your business, to go to the American market. It's a no-brainer. I guess we will see many of them going straight to the US. It's happening in wine as well, in alcohol-free wine as well. We see a massive movement, massive sales actions and campaigns when it comes to marketing direction, US and also Canada. So this will go on in the future, I guess. Right now, after the market, after the history of alcohol-free beer, we come to my favorite beers. And as I said, I am not a beer guy, but I have some types of tastes, of styles in my head when it comes to beer. And I did some research on that, and I tried to put it in some categories. And the categories I chose are the traditional lager, Pilsner style, the Mexican lager, the more, like, I would say, spicier one, especially famous in the US. I chose a stout, so the malty ones. And there is a very short path, a very small difference between stout and porter. And actually, porter was there at first in 1730, and stout came afterwards. And even Guinness started as a porter and then went up to be an Irish stout, as it is still today. So I chose stout. I chose Indian Pale Ale, IPA, because it's quite famous in the especially craft beer sector. And as well, because I live in Germany and Austria is quite close, and it is a really big thing in Austria and Germany, I chose my favorite Shandy. So a mix between alcohol-free beer in that case and lemonade. So these are the 5 categories I chose. And right now, I want to give you my favorite beers. And just to be clear on that, every data we have looked on so far is, of course, also driven by some of the brands we will have a look at in a second. You can see everything I talked about in the links I put in the show notes. It's basically the data is from Future Market Insights. When it comes to the worldwide alcohol-free market, there is a really cool section at Statista on non-alcoholic beer. And what you can do is, this is currently the page I have opened for worldwide alcohol-free beer, revenue, volume, share, expected growth rate, and this is available for almost every country. So you can just choose your country. You can say, I want it for continents, I want it for countries. You can choose your favorite country. Let's say I want to have it for Belgium, and then you can switch the graph, the data, everything to the country you prefer. And that's absolutely amazing. Link is in the show notes as well. And especially when it comes to the growth potential of the American market, there was a really good article in the Wall Street Journal. So have a look on that. It's a link in the show notes as well. So let's talk about my favorite beers. And what you can see right now is a picture I took of my favorite beers I had. And when it comes to favorite beers, of course, it's the taste. It's always the taste, people. And this is a more subjective thing because, I mean, even though I know how to taste wine and try to stay as objective as possible, you have your personal taste. I mean, we all know the story of Robert Parker and changing the industry of wine. And this is quite similar, I guess, when it comes to beer. I mean, I'm able to taste at least if this is quality, if it's process quality, if it's product quality, is it well made, and is there any depth, or is it just you have to drink it at 2 degrees and, you know, it's just water with kind of a taste or a flavor, or is there something behind? And it's a mixture of why this is my favorite beer. And of course, one parameter, one factor I always had in my head is this a beer I would drink if I'm more into the alcoholic version of that beer or beer in general? So if I'm a fan of IPA, and I mean, usually beer is between 4 and I would say 6%, the normal ones of alcohol, is it close to the beers I like? And that was easier for me because I don't drink beer. I barely drink beer, but I found my favorites and I want to share it right now. So let's start with the category of IPAs. I mean, IPAs are quite, I would say, hop forward, malt forward. They're sometimes quite tropical, fruity, fresh, intense notes of citrus. Sometimes it's, super tropical even, and they have this slight bitterness in the end. And sometimes it's really tough to balance this bitterness with the tropical flavors because sometimes some beers just feel too sweet or they too bitter and there is no balance. And right now we're talking about quality. Where's the balance of the beer? And can it be balanced without adding sugar or just polishing the beer in a non-natural way? And of course, all of those beers, or most of them, are commercial industrial product. There are some craft beers as well in the lineup, but basically what I want to say is I have two favorite beers when it comes to IPA. One is from the US, available in the American market. It's Athletic Brewing. It's the can on the left of the picture, and there is several versions of it, but the Free Wave Hazy IPA was my favorite one. It was tropical, it's hoppy, it's fruity, it's fresh, and it also had this mouthfeel of being a normal beer, but because some of the alcohol-free versions you can really spot because it's just thin, there's no body, there's a lack of creaminess, of structure, of everything. It's usually, it tastes like bitter citrus lemon infused water, and this is far away from that. So the brand Athletic, they know what they're doing. It's really good products. They sit in, I would say, an affordable price level. The can is around about $2 in the US, and they're really good products. And my favorite one was the Free Wave Hazy IPA. It's the orange one. The only problem I discovered in the US is that there was just one shop in 3.5 weeks in the US where I was able to buy one single can. Usually you have to buy 6 cans, and especially when you're in exploration mode, it's quite tough because, I mean, you see a box of 6 cans, they are sold for 12 to 15 bucks, and then you have to take the decision, should I try a beer I've never tasted for 12 bucks? Because if you don't like it, what do you do with the rest? Normal beer, at least, you might be able to give to people easier. I don't know. But I found one shop and he sold them separately. I talked to him and said, and he said, it's working. Yeah, he opened it and it's working. It was $2.50 or so, and I tried different ones, and this was my favorite one, Athletic Brewing Free Wave Hazy IPA. And I mean, I live in Germany and also tried some German ones, and the beer with the bright label with the big IPA letter on it, IPA 2.3. It's from a brewery called Riegele, located in Augsburg in Germany. This was by far my favorite beer in Germany I tried. It's also this IPA character, and it even feels like it's just well made. You know, you don't have to think about it. It's fresh. It's still tropical, but not super tropical. There is this bitterness that comes with the beer, and it there is also this slightly creaminess in the mouth. So you have a mouthful of beer. It's easy drinking, and just comparing the two in my head, I would say I would even go for which one would I choose? It's quite tough because I was drinking a Flatic on the beach, an IPA in my tasting room, but I guess I would choose the German one. Both beers are absolutely amazing. If you are in Europe, I guess it's easier to get your hands on, I don't know, a Brewdog IPA, which is also really good. Or in Germany, I can highly recommend Riegele. There is some companies that are selling national and international beers in their online shops. I put one link in the show notes. Unpaid advertisement. It's just like if you are interested in that, just Google it and you will find some shops. It's the same with Guinness, for example. Guinness 0.0. There's one shop in Germany who offers the alcohol-free version. Which brings us to the stouts. Stouts usually are richer in flavor. They have darker color. They have this maltiness, sometimes reminding you of coffee, chocolate, caramel, and even sometimes licorice, depending on the beer. And this would definitely be my style of beer for my palate. There were some. Were there any in the US? There is no stout actually in the US except the Guinness. I found the Guinness 0.0 in the 560 something milliliters can in the US, and it blew my mind. I have never ever blind tasted a beer that is so on point in the style of the original one. You don't need the fucking alcohol when you have a beer like that. Seriously, believe me, it's an absolutely stunning beer. It's just good. They managed to keep the identity of this iconic stout beer from Ireland. It's just freaking amazing, and this is why it is on my list actually. It's available in the US, in the UK, and as I said, in Germany as well. And another one from Germany is the Wolfskraft Brutal. It's a domestic beer somewhere around Munich, and it's a beer I really like because it's quite intense actually when it comes to the roasted flavors and aromas. It's more on the chocolatey, roasty coffee side, and still there was some freshness. It was not super creamy like you would expect it from a Guinness or so. It was more like on the fresh side, but you still had this felt sweetness of the malt beer, of a malt beer. It's a really good one. And when it comes to malt beer, in Germany, they usually say it's the beer for the women. Stupid things, stupid stereotyping. There is another one. It's the one on the right. This one actually was my favorite stout in Germany. It's from Hoppebräu, and it's called Ruhige Kugel. And it's a German malt beer as well, 0.0, of course. And if you don't know Ruhige Kugel, the translation would be having it pretty cushy, like you're relaxed, easygoing. And it was creamy. It had this stoutiness, this maltiness, and also some rich roasted flavors. Not intense like the Wolfskraft, but it was still what I would expect from a normal in quote unquote, normal stout. And this is why I liked it. And those are my favorite ones. And the interesting thing is, I mean, we didn't talk about how you can treat a beer that it is alcohol free. There is several versions. I mean, we talked about distillation like they did in Prohibition. There is vacuum distillation actually. There is some beers who are just brewed and they stop the fermentation when it's sitting around 0.5. And another version is reverse osmosis. And this is what Guinness does. And this is why they are able to keep, I would say, most of the character of the original version. I think in the future, it won't be interesting and necessary to know how an alcohol-free wine was made. It's just nerdy stuff, guys. If you like it, if it's tasty, who cares? And it's the same with beer, even today. So let's just get rid of the discussion on how alcohol-free beer or wine is made. It's interesting for nerds like me, but talking to normal people, to customers who just want to find their favorite drink, who cares? There's several versions, and if this beer is made with reverse osmosis or vacuum distillation, who cares? By the way, I'm drinking Corona. What a great transition. This wasn't planned. The next beer category for me is Mexican beer or Mexican lager. And actually, this is a beer I liked 20 something years ago when I was 16 to 18 or something. I was a big fan of Desperados. Or what is the other brand called? Salitos? Salitos, I guess. So it's a lager, it's a Pilsner style, but it has this sweeter, spicier taste. It's lighter, it's refreshing, sometimes reminds you of this subtle corn sweetness. And I mean, one of the brands worldwide is Corona, and they made the Corona Zero, and it's freaking amazing. My friend Johannes, if you're listening, this is your part right now. He asked me, which beer can you recommend that is super close to the taste of an original beer? And I said, Corona Zero. If you like the style of Mexican beer, try that one. And he said, definitely, Alex, you nailed it. This is a really good beer, and this is my recommendation for you as well. Corona 0.0. It's super fresh. It's super light. It has this subtle sweetness, this slight bitterness, but it's still drinky as hell. It's you just open it, and this is 330 milliliters a bottle. It's easy drinking, and I love it. I really love it. This is a beer I would choose on a summer holiday, on the beach, on the terrace, or even if you. There is still this stigma that people who work on construction sites or I don't know, building roads and highways and stuff, they have to have beer during work or after work. And if you think you should drink a beer while working or after working, choose an alcohol-free one. And Corona Zero is stunningly good beer. So when it comes to Mexican beer, this is the only one I tried actually, so it is my favorite one. It's definitely, I can highly recommend it. From Mexican lager to the normal lager. And this is a category which has never been my favorite, especially when it comes to beer, because usually those beers are lighter, they are higher in bitterness, and especially when you have a look on the map of Germany, the northern you come, especially when around the area of Hamburg, Bremen, the closer you get to the Northern Sea or the Baltic Sea, the beer gets bitter and bitter. And if you're not a fan of this, especially when it's like super unsexy bitter, then this is not your category and it's not mine as well. But I tried some beers and actually I find some really good ones. And when we talk about the, let's say, less bitter ones, the more creamier, maltier ones, my favorite one was the Augustina alcohol-free. And I made an Insta and a video on that because it was quite tough to get a bottle of this. It was traded like gold actually in the summer. Right now it's better, the availability is better, but in summer it was quite tough to get a bottle. Thanks to Sebastian Seppel, thank you very much for the bottle. He traded me under the desk of a birthday party. He traded me 2 bottles. So thank you for that again. This is a really good one. And when it comes to the more bitter versions, my favorite beer so far was the Carlsberg 0.0. And I had this, funny enough, in Hamburg at the railway station while waiting for my train. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to take a bottle or a can with me. And it was from a keg. It was a freshly poured glass of Carlsberg 0.0 from a keg. And it was just an explosion of freshness. There was this bitterness, which I usually don't like, but it was just balanced with some sweetness, with a hint of citrus, and it was just, maybe it was also a bit creamier due to the freshly poured from the keg version, but it was just an amazing beer. But what I kept is actually this beer mat, and it was my favorite lager in general, and the branding is also really good. And I compared it to the normal one in a, what was it, a bottle? It was a bottle, and I had it in a bottle, and it was okay-ish, but the one from the keg was way better. And last but not least, my favorite Shandy, because we have to talk about Shandy. We're in Austria and Germany, and most of our listeners are from the area around that. My favorite Shandy is Gösser. And when you think a Radler, a Shandy, already sits by around only 2.5% of alcohol, how can a Shandy without alcohol taste? I compared 3 different Shandies with their original version and the one without alcohol. And always the alcohol-free version was better because it was fresher, it tasted less sweet. Shandy usually is a bit sweeter because of the lemonade that is added to the beer, usually 50-50. It was usually fresher, and it felt like a citrus infused beer. And this is what I really liked, and my favorite one, Gersa 0.0, available in bottle and in cans, whichever you prefer. So those were my favorite beers. I give you a list. I put the link in the show notes. I will make an Instagram post, a carousel on that. And just to sum this up, even if you are a beer fan, it's the same with wine. Try some alcohol-free versions, even if you just want to a zebra stripe saying, I don't know, I only drink beer on Friday and Sunday, and the rest of the week I just enjoy my alcohol-free version of a beer. If I want to drink something fresh with a taste that is not just water, you can have alcohol-free beer that is really good and well made, and you will definitely find your favorite, even though you are a brewer or a super freaking beer enthusiast. It's the same with wine. So keep your eyes open, try the stuff you can get no matter where you are living, US, UK, Australia, Germany, France, wherever. Beer is available, alcohol-free beer is available. I hope that you are excited for this category. Try some stuff out. There is truly an alcohol-free beer for everyone out there, and the flavors have come a long way, guys. See you on Saturday with the weekly update. Ciao, ciao.